Yeah, welcome to Point to Point channel. So, as part of Java 8 series, today I will discuss about the default and static methods which are introduced in Java 8 version. So, let's learn the concept with some example. Yeah. So here, if you see, I have one interface. Okay, I have an interface in which I have add method. Okay, so I have two implementation classes. Here, if you see test one, which implements I1. Here, I have given the implementation for the same add method. Okay, so this is a add method from test one. Okay, so here, if you see, I just created an object for this test one and invoked this add method, and the same thing with the interface reference. Right, I mean superclass reference can refer to subclass object. Even interface reference also can refer to implementation class object. So with this style also I just invoked the same add method. Okay, and at the same time I just want to show you I do have one more class test2 which implements the same I1. Here also I just gave the implementation of the add method. So prior to Java 8, what we used to do, so whenever we want to add a new functionality to the same I1, so let's assume I want to add, for example, multiply method. Okay, so as soon as I add this multiply method, okay, so then immediately if you um, see both test1 and test2. See here, if you see both test1 and test2 started, showing the compile time error. I mean, they were simply breaking right here. If you see, now what it is saying. I mean, it is saying to what is say give you implementation to that newly added method, that is multiply method, right? So let's assume in a enterprise level application, definitely you will have over hundreds of classes which implements the same interface, right? So in that case, I mean, if you add a new method within the interface, all your implementation classes will start showing compile time error. They will break, simply break. So they, I mean, so so to address this problem, okay, so in the Java 8 team, so they thought to add a new functionality to collections API and other APIs. So and at the same time they want to make sure that okay, all your existing applications should not have any compile time error. Okay, so basically they want to provide a backward compatibility. So that's why they just introduced a default method. Okay, so now let me show you what is default method. Okay, so for example, okay, see, by default it is public and abstract, right? This multiply method. So what I will do, in order to define a default method, you need to use a default keyword. See, this is a default keyword. Okay, and you need to give some implementation within the default method. Okay, so for example, I'm just giving something. This is a default. Okay, from I1, something I wrote. Okay, so now you see, and this is a default method, right? Now this is a default method. You have given some implementation. So what we are trying to say, so we just added some new functionality within the interface I1. Okay. Now all the implementation classes of this I1, whoever is interested to invoke this, what is this, this particular method, okay, multiply method, happily they can invoke this multiply method. If they don't want to invoke, happily they can ignore also, right? So so by this way we can include or we can add a new functionality to the interface. Now if you see that test1 and test2, so they will not break. See, now they will not break. See, so so this is the purpose of adding a default method. Okay, so the next point here is, okay, can I try to override the default method which is added in the interface I1? Okay, the answer is yes. Okay, why? Because here if you see I1, okay, now, okay, let me try to invoke this multiply method from test1. Okay, so see, so for example, so this is just a add method. I mean, this is a, I mean, abstract method within the interface. I just give implementation to that abstract method. Okay, now let me try to invoke, okay, that multiply method. Okay, see that multiply method, and in one more style also. Okay, I will try to implement multiply method. Okay, let me run this. Okay, see, I mean, in the implementation class I just created an object. That's it. I mean, with that object reference I am just trying to invoke a multiply method which is defined in the interface. See, happily we got, right, this is default. This is default from I1, and here also this is default from I1. So this is how we invoke a default method. Okay, now let's assume you are not happy with the implementation which is given in the interface I1. Now you want to you want to give your own implementation. So in that case, okay, so see here if you see, simply you can override this. Okay, so here again there are two sub concepts. Okay, so for example here I want to give my own implementation. Okay, I'm just saying this is okay, this is default, okay, from test one. Okay, this is default from test one, I'm just saying. Okay, uh, this is default from test one. Okay, so now let me try to execute the same test one once again. So this time, like, you will invoke this multiply method whatever you have implemented, right? So for example, if here if you see this is default from test one, right? So why? Because since we have overridden that the default method, obviously, yeah, you will invoke your own implementation, right? So the next concept. Okay, okay, I'm fine with my own implementation, but I want my implementation and as well as this interface implementation also. In that case, is there any way? Yes, we have this way, so we need to do something like this. So here if you see, this is our own implementation, this particular line, and here if you see I1 dot super dot multiply. So I1 dot super dot multiply, in the sense multiply is a default method, right? That's what we have seen here. So now I'm just so there should be some way to invoke this multiply method, which is defined in I1. So right. So this is the way I1 dot, okay, super dot multiply method. Okay, so by that way, happily we can invoke this multiply method which is defined in the I1. So let me try to execute once again. So now we will get this SOP and as well as this SOP also. Okay, see here, this is default from test one and this is default from I1. Here also this is default from test one. This is default from I1. Yeah, so far we are good. So yeah, so we have covered these concepts. Now let's jump into the next concept. Okay, so okay, now we understood what is default method. Okay, the next question comes, what if we have a same method in two interfaces? Okay, so now what I'm going to do, okay, let me add this default method in another interface. Let's assume I have one more interface, I2. Okay, so here I just added the same default method and now I just changed from I1 to I2. Okay, now if you go here test one. Okay, so now what I'm doing, I1 comma I2. Okay, so I'm just implementing two interfaces, I1 and I2. Okay, so now okay, um, okay, so let me comment this. Okay, let me comment this. Okay, um, yeah, let me comment this. See now, immediately it is showing the some compile time error, right? So what it is saying, see what it is saying. Okay, so test one inherits unrelated defaults from I1 and I2. So that's what it is saying. So overall, what it is trying to say is compiler is getting a ambiguity. So which multiply method I'm supposed to invoke, either from I1 or I2. So we need to we need to resolve the compiler's ambiguity here. No, yeah. So one second. Yeah. So here if you see, so how to resolve the compiler's ambiguity in the sense, okay. So what Java 8 team has thought, in order to resolve this ambiguity, so there is no other way. What you need to do, you need to override this default method in your implementation class. Okay. So for that, okay, I'm just uncommenting this. Okay. So here if you see, I'm just uncommenting this. Okay. So here, so here what I'm saying, I1 dot super dot multiply. So what does it mean? Okay, I am implementing two interfaces I1 and I2 which are having a same default method, but I am giving a full clarity to the compiler saying that, boss, I have given implementation to this multiply method and in which I am interested to invoke this multiply method of I1. Okay, multiply method of I1. Okay, so by this way, if you execute this one, you will get a SOP statement from this I1's multiply method. Okay, see, this is default from I1. Okay, now you can even change to I2 also. Here you can see you can even change to I2 also, and you can rerun this. Okay, so here if you see, So whichever you are interested, whether it is I1 or I2, you need to simply change I1 dot super or I2 dot super. Here you can see this is default from I2, okay, and here also this is default from I2. So by this way we can address this issue, okay. So I think everybody knows about the diamond problem in Java. Okay, so in the case of classes, when I mean it is restricted to extend multiple classes. Why? Because the same reason. If in case you are two classes which you are extending, okay, are having a same method, obviously compiler will get ambiguity. So that's why they just restricted to extend two classes, okay. So but it is possible through the interfaces, okay. But now since we have started adding a concrete functionality in the form of default methods in both I1 and I2, so now even diamond problem also resolved with this default methods concept, okay. So yeah, so far we are good, okay. So then let's move to the one more concept, okay. So now let's assume I'm having one more base class, okay. In the base class also I have a same multiply method, okay. Okay, so here if you see multiply from the base class. Now let's assume if I extend this base, okay, so extends base, okay. So now what happens? Why? Why? Because now our default method is there, the same multiply method is there in I1 and I2. Okay, here also if you see, okay, so here, yeah, so here if you see, I2 also have the same multiply method. Now even in the base class also have the same multiply method. Of course, this is not a default. Why? Because this is a class. So now we are extending a base and implementing I1 and I2. Now if you invoke multiply, which version of multiply method is invoked, whether it is from base or I1 or I2? Okay, let's verify the same. Okay, so here, okay, let's run the same. Yeah, so here if you see, this is default from I2. Why? Because we have given a implementation, right? So obviously whenever you give your own implementation, you take the highest precedence, right? So that's why this particular line got executed, okay. So this is a clear cut. If you have a implementation, then there is no doubt, even though if you extend base or I1 or I2, 100% your own implementation only will take the highest precedence. Let me comment this, then verify what happens, okay. Let me rerun the same application. Yeah, it will take a while. Yeah, here if you see multiply from the base class, so that means always base class method will take a highest precedence, and interfaces default method will simply be ignored, okay. So this is a one more point, okay. So I think we covered most of the concepts, okay. Let's move to one more concept, okay. So here if you see, if you go to I1, okay, yeah, so this is a default method, right? Yeah, one more concept I want to say. Let's assume we have one more interface I1, okay. I1, okay. So here also, okay, I want to have the same multiply method, okay. So okay, so for example, okay, default, okay, the same multiply method I want to keep in I also, okay. So here I'm just changing to I, okay. Let's assume, okay. So now I want to keep this multiply method only in only in I mean I1. Okay. I don't want to keep in I2. Okay. I'm just removing this. I'm just removing this. Okay. So now if you see your test one, so now if you see now I'm just removing this even base also. Okay. See now test one implements I1 and I2. Now what I'm trying to say is I1. Okay. Let me extend this I, okay. Let me extend I, okay. Now go to I2, okay. I2 extends I, okay. So what I'm doing here, okay, extends I, sorry, yeah, extends I. So that means I have two interfaces, I1 and I2. They both are extending the super interface, that is I. So in that interface we have a same multiply method. Here if you see, this is default from I, okay. Now in the I1, Okay, in the I1 again I do have the same default method implementation. Here this is default from I1. Okay, but if you see in the I2 I don't have any implementation, right? I don't have any implementation. Now if you see in the test one, okay, so first I will show you the one by one the case. Okay, let's assume I am just implementing I2 only. Okay, I'm just implementing I2. Okay, so okay, um, let me comment this. Okay, of course I just commented this. Okay, so here also it will break. Okay, let me comment this. Okay, here also it will break. Let me comment this. Okay, so now what I'm doing, test one implements I2. Okay, I2 here if you see, okay, I T1 dot multiply method. So here if you see, it is jumping to this interface I, right? But you are not implementing I, right? But you are implementing I2, right? So here, but I2 is extending I, right? So here if you see I2 extends I, within the I2 we don't have anything. So so, this is kind of a hierarchy, right? So that's why whenever you invoke multiply method, okay, it will come here. Since you don't have any multiply method, again it will start searching that same multiply method in the even in the super interface I. Okay, since it finds this multiply method, this will be invoked. Okay, so this is case one, that's what we have seen. Okay, let me try to execute the same thing so that you will get a good clarity. Okay, now your whenever you invoke multiply method, this will be printed. This is default from I1. This will be printed. Here you can see this is default from I1. Sorry, I default from I. Okay, so far we are good. Okay, now I want to show you one more possibility. Okay, now what I am doing, implements I1 comma I2. Okay, I1 comma I2. Of course, I need to give a implementation, right? I'm just yeah. So far we are good. Okay, now if you see within the I1 also we have the same multiply method, right? Within the I1 also we have same multiply method, and one more possibility is within the I2 we don't have, but within the I also we have this one. But this is a kind of a longest path, right? Compiler has to go to I2 and from there it needs to go to I. So this is one possibility, or compiler can go to straight away I1. I1 in the sense here. Why? Because so this is I1 in I1 also. This is a why? Because test one implements I1 also, right? This is a shortest path, right? So now if you see, okay, if you execute this, okay, so this time uh, shortest path will be considered. So by that way, multiply method will be executed from the I1. Why? Because here you see default from I1. Okay, why? Because you are implementing I1 and I2 straight away in the I1 itself. This default method is there. Okay, so that's why it is simply considering the method from I1. So this is one more concept. Okay, so shortest path will be considered. Okay, now let's discuss about the static method. Okay, static method, here if you see, static methods are very simple. Okay, like how we define the default method, in a similar way we just need to define a static methods also. Okay, so I'm just copying this. Okay, I'm just we need to just remove this default keyword, not required. I'm just adding static. Okay, so I'm just changing to print. Okay, something I'm saying. Okay, so this is a static. Okay, from static print. Okay, from I1. Okay, let's say something. Okay, so now if you want to invoke this one, okay, you need to invoke with I1 dot I1 dot print. Okay, right, obviously we cannot invoke static methods from using object reference. Okay, so the best way to invoke this one is using this one. I mean either class name or interface name. Here you can see I1 dot print method. Let me run this. Okay, so obviously this will be printed. This particular line will be printed. Okay, it will take a while. So yeah, here you can see this is a static print from I1. So this is a static method. So basically, why static methods are introduced in the sense, prior to Java 8, whenever we have some kind of utility methods, I mean, so we used to have all those methods either in collections class or some other class, right? So I mean, then we used to do so collections dot sort, collections dot that, something like. So then even Java 8 team what they thought, okay, I mean, why don't we include these kind of utility methods, which are static methods, straight away within the interface? So then they just introduced this static methods concept within the interface, right? So this is the static method concepts. Now with the addition of this static methods, even we can have a main method also straight away within the interface. Why? Because main method is a end of the day that is a static method, right? So here if you see, uh, yeah, yeah. So what I'm doing, okay, I'm just printing. This is from I1 main. Okay, I'm just saying something. Okay. See, I just defined main method also straight away within the interface. Why? Because main method is a static method. Since we have got a provision to add a static methods in Java 8, so by that way we can even have a main methods also. Let me run this. This will be printed. Sorry, this is from I1 main. It will be printed. See here you can see this is from I1 main. So yeah, so this is one concept. Okay. So the last concept of this particular video, okay, can we have a default methods which are defined in an object class? So everyone knows, right, what are the methods in the object class. Here if you see, every class indirectly extends object class, right? So here if you see, okay, so for example, here you see these are all the default methods. Okay, so for example, if I have I mean, if I have this toString method, okay, within my class, okay, now let me copy this. Okay, let me copy this. Okay, so here if you see, if you go here I1, okay, so what I'm trying to do here, okay, let me remove this. I'm just changing to default. So I'm just so let me say something. Okay, some ABC. Okay, so here what it is trying to say here, if you see, the default method toString, okay, toString overrides a member of java.lang.object. So you know if all your implementation classes anyhow have a object as a super class, right? So for example, whenever you invoke any toString method, obviously uh, object class toString method will be invoked, right? So now if you in case if compiler permits to add this type of default methods which are introduced in the object class, like equals method, hash code method, toString method, so many methods are there, right? So then obviously this particular default method will be invoked, right? So so you will lose the access to invoke the methods which are available at object class, right? So that's why what they thought, okay, better to restrict uh, uh, defining object class methods as a default methods within the interface. So that's why immediately it will show the compiled error which is not allowed. Okay, so better do not have a default methods which are defined in the object class. Okay, so yeah, I think I have covered all the concepts within default and static methods. Okay, let's review the important key concepts whatever we learned so far. Okay, the first question, okay, why default methods are introduced in Java 8? So I just gave explanation. Whenever we can add a new functionality in the interface using the default methods in Java 8. Okay, so by this way, default methods can be invoked by all implementation classes without any compile time errors. Okay, so the next question, can we override a default method in a class? Yes, we can override. That's what I have already shown. Okay, and the next question, okay, can a class implement two interfaces having a default method with the same name and signature? No, obviously compiler will not allow, right? So compiler gets ambiguity which one to invoke. So to address this problem, what we need to do, we need to give something like this: i1.super.print. First of all, we need to we need to override particular method within your implementation class, and within that implementation, so you can simply say i1.super.some method or i2.super.that method. In that way, you can you can address that ambiguity issue. Okay, the next question. Okay, so if a method definition has been specified in the base class, okay, and the interface, okay, then which the class is implementing, okay, so which definition will be, okay, if you try to access it using the interface reference and class object. So obviously base class definition will have a highest precedence over the interface. Okay, default method definition. So no compile time error here. Here the compiler will not throw any error, and by default it will invoke a implementation which is defined in the base class instead of default methods which are defined in the interface. Okay. So the next question, why starting methods are introduced in a interface? So by this way we can add all utility methods in the interface itself using the static method. Okay. Next, can we keep the main method in the interface? Yes, we can keep the main method which is static in the interface. Okay. Next, so if a class implements I1 and I2 which extends the interface I1, so we have the same default method in I and I2, then which when a class invokes the default method, which one will be invoked? So obviously default from method from I2 is invoked because this is shortest path. So next one. So can we have object class methods as a default methods interface? No, compiler will not allow this. Why? Because okay, precedence will be given to the object class methods only. That also I shown. Okay, so now Java 8 team has really introduced these kind of default methods in any predefined classes. Okay, so can you give an example? So interviewer may ask this question. Yes, you should be in a position to answer this question. Yes, if you take iterable interface, we have default methods for each method. Split iterator method. All these are default methods introduced here. Okay, so um, yeah. So one second. Yeah. So similarly, if you see the collection interface we have a string method, parallel string method. These two are also default method. And similarly, you have list interface, right? In the list interface, I mean, they just introduced the sort method as a default method now in the Java 8, and similarly replace all also. Earlier prior to Java 8, whenever you want to sort a list, you need to take a help of collections.sort. Now straight away that sort method is added as a default method within the list interface itself. Okay. Now, similarly, if you see, can you give example some static methods in the collection API? So if you see in the stream interface, they just introduce a few static methods. For example, if you want to create a new stream, you can create with builder method or empty method or off method or generate method. Okay. Similarly, comparator interface, everybody knows, right? We have comparable and comparator. So comparator method, earlier we used to have only two methods. What methods? Compare method and the equals method, right? Now, in addition to those two methods, they just introduced a few more methods here. For example, comparing int, comparing double. So all these are static methods. You can go and check the API, okay, by yourself, and then you will come to know all the static methods. Okay. So yeah, so that's it for this video. I hope I just addressed all the issues and concerns of default and static methods which are introduced in Java 8. Okay. If you really like my video, please like and share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.